Hi, ¿cómo estás? Vigueres dia. How are you? Yeah, so last week we talked about meditating on truth. And I just want to ask you, when was the last time you switched your phone off? A word? Yeah, I know. Yeah, when was the last time you turned your Wi-Fi off or your data bundles off? Yeah, when was the last time you switched your television off or your stereo off just to have time for yourself and by yourself and with God? When was it? Yeah. So today we are talking about solitude. And what comes to your mind when you hear the word solitude? For me, it's the word being alone. So it's a state of being alone. It's an intentional time in the quiet to be alone with ourselves and God. Now, solitude is not loneliness. Yeah, it's not loneliness. So there was a guy, he's called Richard Foster. He once said, Loneliness is an inner emptiness. Now, solitude is inner fulfillment. Now, they may contain similar characteristics, but in reality, they are worlds apart. Solitude is a chosen separation for refining your own soul. Now, we live in a world where people don't know how to be alone. We are always busy with other people in front of screens, Instagram, Facebook. Always when you wake up, you have to check your social media pages and all of that. And we are a generation that has access to information, but we are also a generation that is least self-aware. Now, someone once said that we are carried away by technology and the noise of this world, that we don't enjoy our own company. We don't know how to be alone with ourselves and even God. Now, but being alone is a good thing because it allows you to self-examine. Now, as Christians, the Bible calls us to moments of solitude. For example, in the book of Luke chapter 5 from verse 12 to 16, let us read it. It says, while Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. Now, when he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him, Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him. Then Jesus ordered him, don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them. Verses 15 says, yet the news about him spread all the more, so that the crowd of people came to him to hear him and be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. See, Jesus was God, and he was here to serve people. He was here to heal and to save his people. But many times the Bible records that Jesus withdrew from people. Why is that? We see this in the book of Mark chapter 6 from verse 30 to 32 again. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Now Jesus sends out his disciples and they come back so excited at the miracles they have done and the things they have seen. But Jesus calls them to a timeout before anything else. Yeah, why is that? Why is that important? So this tells us something about solitude. Now, solitude, the first thing that solitude does is that solitude gives us a time to rest. You see, I'm an introvert, but one thing I do know is that even the most social person needs rest. I mean, we see this in Mark chapter 6, we see this in Luke chapter 5. But the thing is that we live in a world where we always tend to be busy. Yeah. Sometimes we say that I'm on my grind, you get, yeah, because of the demands of life, that we forget that we are human beings and not human doings. Our bodies are built in such a way that if we work too much without rest, we might experience what we call burnout. Yeah. And maybe you're like me. Naturally, you don't know how to rest. You don't know how to rest. If you choose time to rest, if you get time to rest, you always look for something to do, because if you rest, you feel guilty, you feel like you're lazy. So that's how I am personally. But of lately, I've had to learn it, because when I don't rest, I start dragging at work. It affects my productivity at work and at home, and it even affects my health. So I have to learn how to rest. You see? So maybe you're like me. So the thing is, rest, if you don't rest, it affects your productivity at work and at home sometimes. And it even affects your health generally. So rest is so important. But when you rest, you're always ready, you are re-energized, rejuvenated, you feel refreshed, and you're ready to go. So it just tells us that rest is important. The second thing that solitude does is that solitude gives us time to self-evaluate. Yeah. See, it's easy to lose yourself when you don't take a step back to examine your life, to focus on the most important things. And part of self-evaluation is when you you get time to self-examine and get a revelation of yourself. And I think sometimes we always don't want to take time for ourselves. We don't want to spend time by ourselves because we are afraid of what we will see in us. Yeah. Sometimes we have attitudes that resonates within us that needs to be changed. Yeah. So those are some of the things that we are afraid of. So self-evaluation, self-examination gets you to a place where you start realigning your priorities in life, what has been achieved, and what to pray on. And someone said that self-examination is like that exams that you can't fail. It's an exam that has been set by you. It's being done by you, and you also have a helper, the Holy Spirit, to take you through it. So you can't fail it. So if there are things within you that needs to be changed, the Holy Spirit is there to help you through it. If there are things within you that you haven't discovered yet, the Holy Spirit is there to help you through it. So that is self-examination. You can't fail at it. So spending time in solitude help you to self-evaluate. Yeah. So the Holy Spirit gives you the answers you seek and what areas to change, and He guides you through it step by step so that you can get your heart and life right. Well, the next thing that solitude gives you is an opportunity to hear from God. See, many times we wonder whether God speaks, but we are too busy to listen. That is the truth. Sometimes you say, I've never heard from, I don't hear from God. I've never heard God speak. But if you really look keenly, is that maybe sometimes you are too busy to listen. It's in those moments that when things are quiet, we are able to hear God's voice, God's direction. See, one of the ways in hearing God speak in your life is in silence. And the challenge is that we live in a very wordy world. Yeah. So we have social media, we have adverts. Anytime you open your laptop, you open your phone, you have adverts, you have messages telling you, buy me, sell me, smell me, you need me. Yeah. Or you're doing it for the gram. Yeah. See, we have 1,000 voices screaming at us, 1,000 voices screaming at us, that sometimes hearing the voice of God becomes difficult because these 1,000 voices are screaming for our attention. If you need to hear from God, you have to create an atmosphere that allows you to hear His voice, an atmosphere that cancels every other voice just to hear His. See, you remember while you're dating, you had someone that you admire, or or you are in love, or maybe you are in a serious relationship. See, when the other person tells you they will call, and you don't know the time, you always keep your phone close to you, yeah, and you are eagerly waiting for that phone call because you don't want to miss what they will say to you. See, that's the kind of atmosphere that you create with God. So you cancel the TV, you switch off your phone. Sometimes you just switch off, you just go away from people for some time in solitude, because you are eagerly waiting to hear from God, because you don't want to miss what God has to say, because He is that important. Yes. So that's the kind of atmosphere that you have to create. And it's in solitude that we practice this, to keep our ears and hearts closer to God without any distractions, because you don't want to miss what He has to say. And we see Jesus often going to solitary places to pray and to seek God. And if Jesus is our model, surely we as Christians, as young believers, as young people, we should also practice this. And the fourth thing that solitude helps us to do is it puts us in a state of mind where we are ready to deal with the realities of this world. Matthew chapter 14, verses 23 to 25 says, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. And that night he was there alone. And on the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Now, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. Now, the last verse comes after the first verse, which says he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. He was in solitude by himself to pray. Then what we see in the last verse is that shortly before dawn, Jesus goes to his disciples while walking on water. So the thing is, some of the realities that we face are within our control, right? And where we have the ability to change them or to control the outcome. And some realities are just not within our control. Some things, at certain times, some things just happen. Life just happens. Yeah, maybe crime, illness, a tragedy, you lose a loved one. I believe one thing that keeps our mind sane and keeps us moving and ready to deal with such realities of the world is being alone with God. It is from Him that we have the strength to steer our lives forward. Sometimes life can throw you some hard curveballs that you just don't know how to get away from. Yeah? Some situation that you just don't have the wits and the strength anymore. You might face a situation where you just don't know how to go about it. It leaves you confused. It might send you to that dark place, or, you just don't know how to go about it. And I believe that Jesus withdrew in solitude to the mountain to pray, and he was led by God to walk on water. See, God was the missing link there. Jesus was a human just like us. So if he would have tried to walk on water by his own power, he would have sunk. But he took time to hear what the Father has to say. After all, it tells us that he does only what the Father tells him to do. Now the Father gave him the power to walk on water. He walked on something that could have sunk him. Sometimes life can throw us some hard curveballs that might put us into that place where we feel like we are sinking. But God is the reason why we don't sink that deep. We don't get there. So, yeah, but it only happens when we choose to spend time with Jesus. He gives us that power. He gives us that strength. Now, God was the reason why Jesus walked on water. You get? Now, the reality is that life sometimes can make you go crazy, but withdrawing in silence to seek God gives your heart and mind the strength and peace to walk through life and to walk through those hard realities. And I believe that the reason why Jesus also managed to have such an effective ministry for 3 years without a burnout, without dramas, because it always took time to pray and to refocus. See, we cannot be effective in whatever we do. We cannot manage to stand firm in what we believe if we don't take time consistently to pause and reflect. Now, pausing and reflect, I've said, gives you time to rest. It just gives you time to rest, to energize, to rejuvenate, to refill yourself. Then it gives you time to self-evaluate your priorities in life, your relationship with God, your relationship with people, your goals, your vision. And also it gives you time to hear from God. See, we are where we are because of God, and He is our Father. Just like any relationship that you have right now, communication is key. And if you don't hear from God, how will He lead you then? Then the last thing is that just spending time alone with God helps you, gives you the strength and the power to deal with the realities of this world. So it's important to always have time by yourself, to spend time in solitude, so that you can self-examine and hear from God. And you will have the power and the strength to deal with the realities of this world.